Today on Perth Property Hub, we're joined by one of Perth's leading real estate agents, Natalie Hatton. Natalie Hatton has been working in the real estate industry since 2003 and is one of WA's few female auctioneers. Hey Nat, thank you so much for coming on to Perth Property Hub today.
Thank you for having me.
I get a lot of questions from potential buyers when they come to see me about, going over their finances before they make an offer. And one of the biggest questions I get often from first home buyers is, how do I make an offer?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I always give buyers a copy of the contract before we actually sit down and meet to write an offer. Simply because it is such an overwhelming, daunting process that I say, go home, read through the contract, there is a lot to take in, and then when we meet, you're prepped with all the questions that you need to know or you can ask. Same with settlement agent, if they've got a settlement agent in mind first. If it's not me, if it's the listing agent, I always say, get your settlement agent to have a look over it and get them to have a quick look at the property online, as they'll be able to help you understand what conditions that you should be making on that contract of sale to make sure that you've got all your bases covered.
Excellent, great advice. So Nat, what are some of the conditions typically noted on a contract of sale?
Yeah, so really important, build a working order of your plant and equipment, so your electrical, your plumbing, and if there's gas on the home. So when you go to do your final inspection, you're checking all your light fittings, your power points, running the taps, flushing the toilet, checking your gas, RCDs and hardwired smoke alarms. Really making sure that the seller actually provides a certificate to say that they are in working order and they are compliant, rather than the seller just saying that they warrant that it's compliant to the national legislation. Another few things is building and pest inspection. If you're buying a villa, a townhouse, or a home or an actual house, the structural inspection will go on to tell you if there's any significant defects in the home. So if there are any significant defects, you can issue a defects notice to the seller. They have the right to compensate you and to end the contract, or you can come to some form of agreement. Same with pest inspection. It's able to see if there's any actual live activity. They're probably the most important ones. Checking if structures are council approved as well is probably another really important condition to make sure that they are actually council approved.
Okay, great. And they're things that you guide the buyer through when you're going through that, making the offer initially?
Yes. So I like to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. So making sure, yes, that the sellers have made sure that those areas are council approved, and if they're not, actually having a really clear condition on the contract to tell the buyer, look, they're not council approved, they won't be, and they're buying it on an as-is condition. So everything is completely transparent.
So what does it mean if a property's tenanted when someone makes the offer?
Yeah, so if a buyer's purchasing a property that's tenanted, they're actually buying that tenant as well. Not buying the tenant, but they're buying the property with that lease, which is a legally binding agreement. So they have to foresee that lease out, and then 30 days before the lease expires, then they can issue the tenant's notice to vacate. Or some tenants are happy to actually vacate early. So it's all open to negotiation and just an open discussion with the tenant. But 9 times out of 10, yes, that lease is a legally binding document and you have to foresee that lease out.
Yeah, it's a great conversation though for people to have when they know there's a tenant in the property.
Yep.
Because I know myself, I had an experience where clients purchased a property and it was tenanted. They bought the contract to me. There was nothing on the contract at all to say there was a tenant in there. It was only through my conversation with them that it came about that there was a tenant.
Oh, wow.
And then I said to them, you need to go back to the agent and you need to ask, how long is the tenancy for?
Yep.
Are they on a periodical? Can you have vacant possession?
Yeah, 100%. And it's a conversation with the tenant as well. Sometimes if you say, look, the property has been sold at the end of your lease, your lease isn't going to be renewed. Sometimes they're actually happy to vacate earlier as they'd rather keep themselves settled. So, but yes, unfortunately, a lease is a legally binding document.
So Nat, what happens after the offer is made? What are the next steps?
Yep, well obviously they've got to give you a call to get their finances all in order if they haven't already. But essentially nominating their settlement agent, and the settlement agent will then, carry on from there, where they arrange the change of ownership, adjust all the council rates and everything like that. But the buyer's most important aspect is to make sure that they get their finance approval in as quickly as possible, and do all that they can do so that they can settle on the home.
And with the final inspection, how much time do you generally allow for people when it comes to going back to revisit the home before settlement and complete that final inspection stage?
It really comes down to the size of the property. So it can anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour and a half. It really depends on the size of the home. So part of my contracts, I've got an annexure that actually stipulates what's to be in working order. So we essentially just take that and we tick it off that everything's in working order. If it's not, then the sellers have to get that repaired, and under the joint form of general conditions, the buyers have then got the right to go back and re-inspect to make sure those items that weren't working are actually ready, fixed and ready for everybody to settle.
Excellent, that's great to know. Would be really comforting for people when they're buying a property to know that they're not sort of just relying on that happening without having that opportunity to go back and look at it again.
Yeah, that's only just come in 2018, so they did have to rely on us. And obviously a lot of trust to make sure that it's all working. Thankfully with technology we could take videos and photos to really show that things are working, but yeah, now allowing them to go back to have another look just gives them that further comfort and reassurance as well.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for coming on to Perth Property Hub today, and I look forward to welcoming you back again.
Fantastic, thanks for having me.